Here we go. Here we go. It's episode 479. Sold Not For Sale podcast. Coach Colin here. As you may have heard, Ice Cube was doing a podcast tour, as he called it when he was on Joe Rogan. And that tour has made a amazing stop at Tucker Carlson. Incredible. They sit down, they do an interview. They actually did one very cinematic type of interview, and then they did another one that was like a sit down, actually sat, talked, questions. And in this clip, they touched on something that I've touched on recently in a couple past videos when I was speaking about Jason Aldean and the fact that, you know, the left-wing media is trying to frame that song that he's made, good song, as racist. And the fact that the left wing is always trying to, they focus on race, brand people as racist, but as they're branding someone else as racist, they're just showing how much they focus on race. And Tucker and Ice Cube actually sit down, they talk about race in this clip that I'm going to show you. And I figured that was an important clip for everybody to see. Usually when it comes to a Tucker episode, I just upload the whole thing, but I thought that stood out a lot. And I want to focus there because I notice every election cycle, and just in general in the past 4 years, it's ramped up so much, focusing on race. And if you're clued in at all, the whole focus on race is just another way, the best way, the number one way to divide and conquer. Because if white people and black people put aside all of their differences and came together, they'd be the most powerful group to ever step foot on American soil. Straight up. But before I bring you that clip, I'm going to bring you to IamCoachColin.com. We have our newest Public Enemy catalog. It is great. Let me show you a t-shirt here. I'm wearing the hoodie right now myself. Check it out. Public Enemy #1, the cricket connoisseur himself. Do not join the Great Reset. Join the Great Resist instead. Get yourself a t-shirt. It is great. We're going to have more designs coming down the pipeline, just so you know. And for anybody else interested in this, I can't even say this on YouTube, but if you're someone who survived the greatest psychological experiment of all time, get yourself one of these shirts and wear your certificate of achievement with pride. That's called the Certified Pureblood shirt right there. And all of that can be got on IamCoachColin.com. If you want 10% off, no problem. I'll give you 10% off right now. All you have to do is go to the discount code area, put in I am Coach Colin. That's all capital letters, all one word, one L on the Colin, gets you 10% off. And if you're someone who's already done this and you've already purchased something, thank you so much. You are much appreciated. You have no idea. Thank you. Now let's get to this clip talking about race.
It don't work like that.
We've been talking almost all day now. You haven't mentioned race a single time. We've mentioned economics, rich and poor, a number of times. Do you think that we overplay the role of racial conflict in American life?
Yes. I think race, it takes up too much space. There's people that we all have in our lives who are same race that we can't stand. And there's people in our lives from other races that we get along with way better. So it's not about race. It's not about color and gender and this and that. It's about who do you connect with? You know, who do you vibrate with? You know what I mean? Who's on the same wavelength? Who wants to be the same kind of person? Who wants to do the right thing when you want to do the right thing? That's who you connect with. So I think a lot of people make a lot of money off of the racists fighting against each other and bickering. And they the ones who push it in our face all the time that we're separate. And
does feel like there's more of that, doesn't there?
Yeah, it seems like it's like you're stuck in a bad movie and you can't get out. Like you can't find the exit and it continues to play on the screen and you're just running around looking for the exit in this bad movie continues to just haunt you day by day by day by day. You know, that's what we're caught in. A never-ending, winless battle of, you know, of race and color, and we're worried about, you know, where you from, and, you know, hip hop. What's great about hip hop, like, it was a saying in hip hop, early hip hop. I think Rakim coined this phrase. You know, it ain't where you from, it's where you at. You know, and it's so true. It's not about where you come from. It's about where you at right now.
I'm not imagining that this stuff is being pushed on us, right?
No.
Much more than in, say, 1986.
Yes, I think so. Because in 1986, you had movies and television, and it was all scripted, and we knew this is a scripted show. But I think now you have so many so-called reality shows that basically push the same thing, but in a reality-like setting. So, you know, you'll watch a movie on race, okay? And you flip the channel now, you're watching a somewhat like documentary reality show that's highlighting and magnifying race and status and where you belong in this country and where you don't. And, you know, we're highlighting the bad guys here. We're highlighting the good guys, you know. It's just, it's always really showing controversy and pitting each other against each other. And with the reality shows, you know, controversy sells. So they're not showing people getting along. What they want to get to is the fight, the conflict, you know, the argument, the throwing of the bottles, the, you know, the turmoil, the differences. And, you know.
Does that bear any resemblance to your actual life as someone who lives in this country? Like, do you have racial conflict in your life day to day?
Probably, you know, most of them are unseen. You know, I'm not going to say I encounter racism. People know who I am. Police know who I am. Everybody knows who I am. So I probably get a pass on a lot of things that friends, family members, people I associate with, people I love go through all the time because they're not Ice Cube. But, you know, I've had an insurance company drop me because they didn't like my point of view. You know, things like that.
Are you mad about it? Are you mad at people for their skin color ever in the course of a day?
I'm not mad at people because of their skin color. You know, I'm mad at people because of what they do and the things they choose not to do.
Right.
I like that. They keep on talking. This is like a 20-minute interview, but I felt like that stood out the most in regards to what's going on today in the immediate. You know, there's a lot of people who are focusing on race. And I'm not going to lie. I mean, some people didn't like that I said it before, but it's mainly people who are in the left wing, the liberals. You know, somebody's like, oh, no, it's progressive. It's not liberal people. Liberals don't. Are you? Yeah. Okay. Sure. But that's the thing that they do. Now, when we say this, you got to think about everything he was just touching on. He's talking about influencers, movies, and then there's also organizations. Right now, all of those things, and it's not everywhere, but there are people in all of those categories that push the narrative of, and it's such a poisonous narrative. They push the narrative of black people are below, right? And it's even filmmakers who are black, and it's even people liberal who are white who think that they're helping black people with this focus on you're lower than, half the country or most white people, except for me, hate you. It's very interesting. And I bring it up because it happens every election cycle. And I think it happens every election cycle because they want black people to vote Democratic. So they do this type of race baiting, is what it's called. And it's a way to make the whole black community feel other. First, you make them feel angry. Then you make them feel confused. Then you make them feel lower. And then you pull them in. Because once you feel those three things, now you're the other. Now you can get pulled in. It's the divide and conquer. How do we divide black people from some of these, we'll just say for argument's sake, like right-leaning white people? How do we get them away? Well, let's show them a bunch of images through movies, through influencers who are showing them social media posts, and through organizations who bring up the concern, like BLM was. Let's show them all of these images of things that this keep happening. Let's just create the narrative that they're getting killed constantly. It's a constant thing. It happens every day. It happens every 5 minutes. It's just constant. When that's actually not true. It does happen. And it's not usually between a black person and a white person. It's usually, black person, law enforcement. We saw a black person just a few months ago got killed by a group of black police officers. That does happen too. Happens quite a bit. More than you'd think, and much more than they'd actually show you. It's very, very interesting. And like I brought up at the beginning of this, they tried to do it. They are trying to do it with this whole Jason Aldean thing. They're trying to show like, hey, like I said, and somebody, I don't know, I was not even bring up the comment section, but I was talking about how that was like a call out to Antifa more so because they were responsible for most of the havoc that was going on in the cities. And the way that it's such a sinister little plan because Antifa, and just a bunch of wild people, they'll do most of the stuff. And somehow they take this imagery and they say, hey, when somebody talks about that imagery being wrong, they're talking about you. It's a sick game they play with black people. And they do it, like I said, they do it with the movies, the influencers, the organizations. And the next thing you know, every black person feels like they have to vote Democratic. Every black person feels like they have to vote for Biden. For fuck's sake. I have no idea how that happened. Ridiculous. Whether or not it happened in the numbers that are said, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, it's a sick little game. And it's like Ice Cube said, it's like this movie playing and we all want to get out of it. We're looking for the exit. And you know where the exit is? In reality, the exit is in staying off social media. Not forever, but like when you go outside, like I can look at social media and see, the regular race baiting. Another thing that they were doing is white on black or black on white crime. Like, oh, black people are terrorizing white people. That was another psyop of sorts to try and get, divide and conquer. Then what they do is they show black people beating and hitting white people, like just in high numbers. And if you check the dates of most of these videos that you're seeing, they're usually years old. There's a reason that they're showing them to you right now, and you should always look into that. So they show that to a whole group, a demographic of white people, and then they show police officers assaulting black people, and that's how you just build that divide. You just get that divide going real good, and while you're dividing, you're actually getting both sides mad at each other at the same time, and that's social media. But when you go outside, it's not exactly like that. I'm not saying that you don't feel any type of racism when you go outside. I'm sure, there's horrible people everywhere. Even in the greatest neighborhoods, there's horrible people. But it's not as prevalent as it's not as prevalent as the way it's getting pushed to you on social media, the way that these organizations, BLM used to be the forefront of that, the way that they push it onto you, the way that the movies push it onto you. It's not as prevalent as that. And I think it's important for the black community to break away from that, to stop looking at that and stop trying to find racism everywhere. You see that with both sides, trying to find it everywhere. hyper focused. I have to tell you, when it comes to America, like, look at what America is and all of the mixing and all of the people and all the acceptance and all the tolerance. Look at what it is. America is the only place in the world where the white people, only place in the world where the black people are taught that they're lesser than, like terribly lesser than, and the white people are made to feel increasingly guilty and ashamed of what they are. Both are being taught to just be ashamed of what they are. It's really interesting because you don't see that type of demographic in South America. You definitely are not seeing that type of demographic, that type of situation in Africa. You're not seeing it in Europe. You're not seeing it in Asia. You're not seeing it in India. You're not seeing it anywhere else. It's America that really gets focused on that guilt. And there's a reason for it. The reason that I keep bringing up throughout this whole thing, it's been peppered throughout it. It's the divide and conquer. The divide and conquer. I said it at the beginning of this video. If black people and white people decided we're just going to put aside everything and we're coming together and we're going to look at this two-party system and we're going to look at it with a very cunning eye, it would be the worst thing to happen to the establishment ever. Because those two groups are so powerful. Those two groups together could move mountains, could change administrations easily. But when they're apart, it's easier to use them when they're apart. And that's what's going on with the whole race baiting thing. It's a lot. In that last country music video where this gentleman is clearly pointing at people who think it's okay to burn down cities, for that to be framed as racist, it's silly. It's so silly. And that's what I don't usually talk about race, but when it gets to that extent where we're doing that over a song, like, I don't know about anybody else. It's clear as day that it's another divide and conquer tactic. Look at the time it's happening in. If you haven't looked into it, look at everything that's happening with Biden right now. Look at what's happening with him. Look at what there's people calling for impeachments. There's people there's a whole Facebook file case that's coming out that's showing that the White House was doing things through Facebook the same way they were doing things through Twitter. Look at everything that's happening. And then the thing that you're meant to focus on, the two most powerful groups in the country, is a country music song because it's racist. They're afraid of you. And they're not allowed to say they're afraid of you, and they're not allowed to attack you. They have to distract you. It's all they're allowed to do. Listen, like the video. It helps so much. You have no idea. Boost us out of the shadow realms. Let me know what you think in the comments. Are you tired of the race baiting? I don't know about you. I go downstairs. My wife is white. We're going to have some mixed babies. My in-laws are white. They're incredible people. There's all white people. There's farms down the street where I live. There's white people. It's all love. It's all been love. And yes, I've had terrible situations based on race, but few of them. And and I have brothers who are black, of course, some black, but then I also have, my closest friends who I love, who are white. And it's just that part of people is just not being focused on. It's always, like Ice Cube said, it's always the fighting. It's always the point where we don't get along that gets focused on. Because if we started focusing on all of the times where we get along, we would start to get along. And if you started to get along, it would mean trouble for the people in power. They need you distracted because there's so little of them and there's so many of you. And if you think about the buying power and influence that black people have and the buying power and influence that white people have, what is stronger than that put together? What is stronger than that? Anyways, guys, like I said, like the video, subscribe if you have not subscribed already. I'm still in the big screen. I should have put myself bigger. I completely forgot. It's off track, but like the video, helps so much. This was episode 479, Soul Not For Sale podcast. And other than that, I'm out.